Okay, now that we understand the chapter, I want to give you a little bit of direction on the homework assignments. When you log into Chapter 3, or Unit 3, you're going to see Chapter 3. You've read and watched all the videos, went through the PowerPoints, probably taken the quiz, and you're ready to begin the homework. So you can download that file there. That will open up, and on here it's going to tell you what you need to do. So we have two parts. We're going to do the hands-on, 1 through 7, and the discovery, 1 to all of those. The hands-on in the book, discoveries are in the book as well. So I just want to take a quick look at those assignments to kind of help you along if you have any questions. What you need to do before you begin this project is on your operating system, you need to run updates. So type yum update, hit enter. Make sure you're connected to the internet. If you're at home, you might need to change it from bridge to NAT. If you're at campus, you might have to change it back. But you need to be connected to the internet because you're going to go out there, download any updates, and I updated mine just a little while ago. There were about 1,300 updates. It doesn't take that long though, but you have to run updates in order for some of these projects to work. So if you see things not working, then that might be why. Do that first from your command line. Okay, so first project, like I'd mentioned before and in the assignment, I don't want you to answer all of these questions that are in the projects because that will take too long. I just want you to go through the project, take one screenshot, and then explanation of what you did. So for example, the first project, this is what I would have typed for my answer. This project had me practicing the CD and the PWD command. I could use this to move around and then explain a couple other things, what an absolute path is and what a relative path is, because that's what that project did. So here's an example. Write a short summary of what you did in the overall project and then do one screenshot of everything. That'd be great. So the first project, let's go over to that. 3-1 is easy. A login, you're going to connect to a terminal using root. So make sure you're at root, and then this project here just has you using CD PWD. It's pretty easy. It's a pretty easy assignment. Project 3-2, same thing, using CD, and then practice using autofill. So if you start typing in something at the command line, you could do a tab, and if it had something that was going to follow it up, it would autofill that in there. So that project's pretty easy as well. Now, if one of these doesn't work, then sometimes some of these questions, they lead you in a direction where it isn't going to work. So, and then the next part of the question will say, oh, you'll notice that question didn't work. So just read through the whole section and get, and it'll make sense, hopefully, by the end of it. Project 3-3, that's pretty easy, using ls, using more, less command, and then the file command. We looked at that at the beginning of the chapter. 3-4 is using cat, head and tail, and file, and strings. Pretty easy. Project 3-5, okay, what we're going to use VI here, and this just takes a little bit of typing, but we're going to go to our root account and go to our root home directory. So make sure you go to cd/root, and then we're going to create a file called sample1. So to begin that project, you would just make sure you're in the home directory of root, cd space, we can do a tilde, and then that's where I need to be, and I'm going to create a file called sample1. And then in this file, you're going to go through this project and type what it tells us to do. Notice to do. At the command prompt, type my letter and press enter. Nothing displayed to the screen. Oh, that's because we have to type it I. So the first couple questions show us how to go between command mode and insert mode, and then we start typing our letter. So you're going to create a long letter in there and learn how to use VI to open that in a read-only mode and how to save files in there. So when you're done with that particular project, you could just do a cat of that. So if, when you're done, so let's say we save this, so escape WQ, and you're done with the whole thing, just do cat sample 1 and take a screenshot of that. Should be fine. Project 3.6, this is practice using those meta characters, question mark, double question mark. 3.7 is you practice using grep, and then you go into the discovery exercises. Let me take a look. There's one hard one in here I want to give you some help on, so hold on one second. Okay, with the discovery exercises, they're built off of the hands-on. So they're going to ask you to do something, but not tell you how to do it. But it's going to be you're going to know how to do it already because you did the hands-on. So this first question, you're given a scenario where you work for a company that has a bunch of scientists, and somebody leaves the company, and you're instructed to retrieve any of the work in their home directory. So when you go in their home directory, you see that there are a few files, very few, and only 2 directories, 1 projects and 1 named lab. List some of the commands that you would use to navigate through this user's home directory and view file names and file types. If there are any text files, what could you do to view their contents? So what you would type up for something like that is, you could do, okay, first I'm going to go into the scientist home directory. So whatever their name is, and then that would put me in their directory. And then I could do an ls to see what's there. I could look for invisible files. I could look at the long listing. I could use the F command or the F option. I could use something like file asterisk to see what type of things there are, and then using the CD command to navigate into different directories. So you're just going to, how would you explore that? That's what you're looking at for the first exercise. The second one gives you you need to answer these questions. How would you change to a user directory using an absolute path? Remember, starts with root, relative path starts from where you are currently located. So you're going to answer all the questions assuming you're in the user local directory for each of these questions. So you are in this directory, which is right off of root, and you want to change to the user directory using an absolute path. So, if that's where you were, this one, it could be, I want to change, you could do that, but that's not an absolute path. So you want to change using the absolute path. So you would do something like that. Second question, though, it says you could change to the user directory using a relative path name. So I want to go to that's where you would do cd space ... because that's a relative path. So make sure you look at whether you want to use relative or absolute paths there. Number 3 is just using those wild card, those meta characters. So you would do things like asterisks to supply different values, or question marks if it's looking for 3 things, like for example, E, all the files that have exactly 3 letters in their file names in the bin directory. That one would be like ls we're looking. So we're going to use the ls command for all of these in question 3 for list. So that would be something like, this is 3E. It would be something like ls. We want to look in the bin directory, and then it has exactly 3 characters. So we would do, where's my question mark? Question mark, question mark, where did you go? Like that. So look at those meta characters, and that's what you do using the ls command. 4, you're going to explore man pages for those commands. Experiment with what you learned using the sample1 file you created earlier. I don't need man pages for every single one. You would just, ls space man, or man space ls, man space grep. Read through each of these commands if you don't know what they do already, and give some examples of how you could use these commands with that file you created called sample1. Just a couple examples. Question 5, this is a difficult one. You're using grep to search for things that are not to be or not to be. It's very confusing. So if you ran this command egrep to be or not to be against this file name, what would be displayed? Now you don't have to run the actual command to get it to work. You can if you like, but what you can answer that is just explaining this. This would grep out all lines that have the regular expression to be characters, or any characters that are not to be. It's kind of confusing, but break it down and just explain what this is doing. Try to give it a try. Try to give it a command, or try to give it a run if you want. You just have to create a file that has the words to be or not to be in it. But don't spend too much time on it. Try to explain what it's doing based on what grep does. Number 6 is doing an update to Vim. So yum install Vim, again, and Vim minimal. Again, you need to be on the internet, so you need to be connected in order to do that. And then the last one you're going to do is create a new file called question 7. Type this stuff in there, and then use the VI editor to fix any mistakes that you have. So at the end of question 7, run cat to show what you've done there. That you could explain with 8 and 9 as well. That will show us how to set numbers. So make sure you type an explanation for 8 and 9 as it relates to 7, but you don't have to do screenshots for all of those because they're kind of all related. This exrc file in number 9, you could choose. We will modify the exrc file later on, so you don't have to do that. If you want to, look ahead in your book. I don't remember exactly what chapter it is, but you can look in the contents. But I'll take a note to myself that the next time that I see you, or the next video, we can create that exrc file together. So thanks a lot. Enjoy the assignment.